Hello everybody, how you going? And welcome to Balancing Tourism with Conservation in Banff National Park. Something that I can only believe is going to be a fairly constant conversation, just going, okay, yes, we do want to let people go out there, enjoy their awesome wilderness, but also just don't want them to leave a trail of destruction behind them. And so, however you make that and find that balance, it would be difficult.
On January 21st, 2016, members of the Banff Town Wolf Pack were photographed right here in this parking lot at Johnson Canyon, in the heart of the park, scavenging garbage. A year later, 8 wolves are dead, and people like me are asking, why is Banff such a haven for tourists, yet a nightmare for wolves and other wildlife? My name is John E. Marriott, and this episode, we're exposing you to the impact of mass tourism and development on the wildlife of Banff National Park.
All right.
Banff National Park. This has been my backyard for the past 26 years now. And with its stunning Rocky Mountain scenery and spectacular wildlife, it's no surprise that millions of people flock here each year, making this one of the world's premier tourist destinations. But does this popularity come with a cost? Is the gem of our national park system actually failing at protecting what it's supposed to be protecting?
Look at them. Oh, it is always amazing to me that humans have such a, emotional connection between small and cute animals that then end up growing up to be, well, things that could easily rip your face off. I mean, just look at these two guys just rolling around. Even in the other one, we just had them just rolling around in the background, just playing. Meanwhile, you look at what is right next door, and that is what those guys are going to grow into. And I don't particularly think there are many people in this planet that would want to be meeting that face to face. But hey, coming back to what he was originally talking about, I definitely did get the tone very quickly about what this video was going to be about, and like he said, and I can only assume that he enlightens us, they were photographed in a car park. Okay, sure, it makes sense, they've sniffed out some food, but then a year later, 8 wolves gone. I mean, were they run over? I mean, I certainly hope not a hate road kill, but what else could it be? I mean, were they starved because they developed this reliance on the rubbish, or truly what was it? Because to wipe out an entire wolf pack is not an easy task from a biological point of view, in terms of there's a reason that there's movies made about them being kind of the king of the jungle and things, because they are definitely just controlling and very smart animals that know how to get around.
Banff National Park was established in 1885 as Canada's first national park and just the world's third. Today, this UNESCO World Heritage Site spans over 6,600 square kilometers, similar in size to Prince Edward Island or Delaware, and draws visitors from around the world. It is a protected home for 53 mammal species, including some of my favorite animals to photograph. Grizzly bears, black bears, moose, elk, deer, mountain goats, bighorn sheep, lynx, and of course, wild wolves.
Awesome photography. I just want to quickly go back and look at them again. I've actually never heard of big-horned sheep before. I mean, I've heard of rams and I've seen rams, but that's, I can only suppose, a little bit different. I mean, I've also heard bighorn in terms of cars and things, but not the actual animal that it originally came from. And so that is certainly enlightening. But no, awesome photography from an awesome place. Just the size of Banff is just what gets me. It's just so incredible. I mean, yes, it just encompasses so many different landscapes, but really the amount of animals, like you said, and just the true size of it. It is a compact area of awesomeness, but really it's also not even that compact in the grand scheme of things. It's the size of Delaware, Prince Edward Island, and probably half of Europe.
To me and many others, I think wolves really symbolize what wilderness feels like. Not only are they a stunning animal, but science has shown that wolves are a keystone species and an integral part of a healthy ecosystem. In fact, wolves have been shown to positively influence the population size and behavior of their prey, changing foraging patterns and how that prey moves on the land. And there's no better example of the positive role that wolves can play in an ecosystem than the case study of Yellowstone National Park, where wolves were recently successfully reintroduced.
Nice.
I saw the first wolf of my life in Banff in the spring of 1991, just off the Trans-Canada Highway right here at Castle Mountain. I remember watching the wolf across the river here, and all of a sudden being just blown away to see this cow elk come bursting out of the bush with another wolf hot on its heels. The elk lived to see another day, and me, I was hooked.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, let's just admit it, I'm a dog person through and through, and when you see these animals, there is a reason that, I mean, they are just big dogs in that regard, and my goodness, just the howling and the pack nature of it, and even just the smarts of them, just, they're so incredible, just controlling in a positive way. Somehow hunting them just also makes that population increase for some of these prey. It's an awesome fact that they scientifically proved. but you see them running around here, and honestly, it looks like the dog park. You could just be anywhere in the world at a dog park, and as long as you got some big dogs, little dogs, whatever it may be, just socializing animals, it's so awesome to see. No wonder he just got hooked and will just commit to just standing there in the snow. I mean, I guess he's going to be Canadian, but still, just to stand there knee high in snow, just talking and giving an entire YouTube video about it. Well done.
Since that day, I've followed a number of packs all over the Rockies and throughout Banff, from the Bow Valley pack to the Pipestones to the current Banff Town pack.
Nice.
I never get tired of watching and photographing these amazing animals. I first encountered the Newtown wolf pack in November 2015 when I was driving along the Bow Valley Parkway early one morning. I remember watching them in total awe as the 3 yearling pups danced around curiously in the middle of the road at a distance while Mom and Dad just beelined along, all business, looking for prey. At the time, the family seemed to be thriving, but that was about to change.
Oh no.
Sometime in January 2016, construction crews working here at Johnson Canyon left garbage in several open construction bins. On January 21st, a local photographer reported seeing 3 wolves eating that same garbage in the parking lot. That incident began a cascading effect that reads like a crime spree trail.
Oh no. I mean, I don't even really want to hear about it because you said that there was 8 wolves that just disappeared, or I guess didn't disappear, but something happened to them. Man, from construction. Of course it was from construction. It's just, it's typical, isn't it? To be honest though, I do find it quite surprising that they are so regularly seen along the road. I would have thought that being pack animals, but also carnivorous hunting animals, they would want to be just kind of sneakily going through the trees and through the trails and everything like that, not just along a big open road, especially considering that year round there are going to be cars and trucks and probably even planted machinery just using and accessing this road. And so, I mean, maybe they're smart enough to just get clear as soon as they hear it coming, but I also feel as though it would have taken at least one casualty for them to learn that. And look, I say that in particular not to have a dig at the trades, but more so just to recognize that, at least in my experience in Australia and maybe worldwide, I do not know, but Australia definitely has a certain problem with construction waste and construction people being and having these kind of issues, just leaving things around, going down storm drains, whatever it may be. You can always just tell that the construction site is left, unless very highly managed, is left as an absolute pigsty, just waste everywhere for anything just to come along and eat it, pick it up, get washed away, whatever it may be. It really isn't very highly managed, and that becomes a very quick problem, and clearly it does. And look, I do understand that in private residential, for instance, it is a completely different level to this. You might only have one person managing between the builder and everything like that, and so things get more lost up in the process. But for a government-owned / operated thing that's over 100 years old and has so many special provisions already, I would have thought that the loops and hurdles that these guys would have had to jump through to even be there in the first place would be astronomical. And so that is where so many extra special precautions should have been dreamt up and implemented to be able to avoid something like this. I mean, surely in an environmental survey and study and all the science would point you, or even just common sense would go, okay, animals would look for food. If we bring food on site, they will look for it. Do we want them here? No. Do we want dependency? No. How can we fix this? Done. Surely that is the kind of things that should have been thought up, and if they were thought up and not implemented, oh man, I don't want to be dealing with the wrath of whoever has to deal with that, because that is a serious blunder.
That incident began a cascading effect that reads like a crime spree trail. By the end of May 2016, the adult wolves, now feeding 6 new pups, began entering campgrounds and campsites looking for food left out by careless campers.
Of course.
Inevitably, things began to go sideways for the wolves in a terrible way.
Oh.
The events culminated that spring and summer with the deaths of Kootenai, the alpha female, and Scout, one of her yearling pups, both shot and killed by Parks Canada officials that agonized over having to make the decision. Through no fault of their own, the wolves have become food conditioned and were considered a risk to visitor safety. There really was no other option left but to destroy them. Within weeks, the pups began dying too. 4 of them were killed on the Canadian Pacific Railway tracks in the span of a month. And the final 2 pups? Well, they just disappeared into the chaos, never to be seen again.
That is a pretty serious set of statistics right there, and even just a very quick escalation of events just going within 4 months on the railway, because I guess they just weren't being led around properly anymore. They were killed on the railway. That is just tragic, and even I just feel for the I was going to say poachers, but they're not poachers, they're rangers, the park's rangers that had to be putting them down, to be making that decision, to be in those meetings going, what can we do? How can we? Surely we can take them away. Surely we don't have to do this, because like they said, just the agonizing decision to go, we know what this is going to do. There's 6 pups, and if we do this, it would just destroy the entire thing. An entire wolf pack, I can only imagine, like they said, 8 of them just disappeared. How is that possible? They've been there for generations upon generations, I can only assume, and then just like that, one shot ended it all.
8 wolves dead in less than a year. And guess what the fines were for the 2 construction companies that started it all? $1,000 each. The truth is, this park is in serious trouble. Careless behavior such as messy construction sites and campsites are on the rise in Banff, as are visitor and vehicle numbers. In 2014-15, 3.6 million visitors came to the park.
Wow.
And a year later, in 2015-16, visitation numbers jumped a whopping 8%.
Okay.
Banff is now facing a breaking point when it comes to its protection of the park's ecological integrity. There is an ongoing, ever-increasing pressure to commercialize more and more of the park at the expense of the animals that call it home. And while visitation is soaring, Parks Canada has seen its budget shrink almost as quickly. There are now 30% fewer resource conservation staff in the field and on the ground in the park, despite the fact it's busier than ever.
That doesn't make any sense to me. They just said, obviously, there's more visitors, which means more money and more revenue, which means that you should be able to then spend a fraction of that revenue on being able to maintain what you're trying to sell. I mean, it just sounds like a worldwide story between the Great Barrier Reef and all these just massive ecological sites. They just go, yes, we are making too much money here, and so actually, we're making so much money here that it's just not paying anyone anymore. Like, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I'm not entirely sure how much money 3.9 million people bring in, and this is also in 2016, and I just keep hearing that it's becoming more and more and more commercialized through you guys and through this video. But I know that tourism in Australia, for instance, is a multi-billion dollar industry, and that is predominantly driven by a couple of factors, be it the Sydney Opera House, the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and the Great Barrier Reef, and maybe Uluru. There are a few very particular landmarks that I reckon fit a bill close enough to Banff that also are experiencing a similar thing, and it just doesn't make sense because it's not sustainable.
It often seems as if Parks Canada is more concerned about increasing tourism than it is about nature conservation, despite the fact that nature conservation is a key part of its mandate under the Canada National Parks Act.
Of course.
In fact, the Act states that national parks are to be maintained and used so as to leave them unimpaired for future generations.
Wow.
And an amendment to the Act in 1988 made preserving the ecological integrity of the park the first priority in all management decisions.
Oh, see, right then and there, I don't know if Australia has anything like that, but that is very particular wording. And I just wonder how they get away with it. How do you possibly, when you have such particular wording, like when ecosystems have their native components intact, including a natural diversity of species of flora and fauna, antibiotic components like water and rock, and natural processes like fire, flooding, and predation, they have to be left intact. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And really, like I said at the very beginning of the video, I understand that it's not going to be the easiest balancing game between allowing people to experience the nature and wanting everyone to be interested in this kind of thing, but then also, exactly like it says, leave them unimpaired for the enjoyment of future generations. That surely has to be, and apparently is, the #1 priority.
In other words, Parks Canada is supposed to prioritize the health and well-being of the wildlife, biodiversity, and natural processes inside the park.
That's why it's the national
Unfortunately, the opposite seems to be happening. With the continued increase in visitors, coupled with the decrease in funding and park staffing over the past several years, ecological integrity in Banff is suffering. Our wildlife and our wolves are suffering.
Of course. It's a given at that rate.
With more visitors comes more vehicles, a lot more. In fact, last year the park had almost 4 million visitors, and the majority of them came in by private vehicle. What that means is that the park highways have become ribbons of death, mitigated in recent years, thankfully, by the construction of a wildlife fence along the Trans-Canada Highway between Banff's borders.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the Canadian Pacific Railway that dissects the heart of the park has had no such mitigation, and it remains a killing field for everything from wolves and grizzly bears to elk and deer.
Yeah.
Combine the roads and railways with the glut of commercial development in the park, and it's easy to see why the Bow Valley is a tenuous place for carnivores to survive long term. To compound the threat, 2017 is Canada's 150th birthday, and our Liberal government has decided to celebrate the birthday by gifting everyone free entry into our national parks, including into Banff. While that sounds like a great idea on the surface, Banff's already overcrowded town site and attractions are expecting to be flooded with up to 5 million visitors this year.
It's just, it's so difficult. It sounds like a great idea. Just let everyone go and enjoy this awesome country that we have for free. But no, it needs the money for starters. And it also just can't take it. Like, these are wilderness conservation areas. Humans aren't good at conservation when they're in large masses. There's a reason we have concrete jungles and then real jungles, and they aren't one in the same. I mean, I do then wish that I could be a fly on the wall for some of these national parks meetings, just because you'd be going, okay, well, we don't want to chop the park in half of the fence, but we already chopped it in half of the road, and so we want the animals to move freely, but we kind of already chopped that off, and between the road and also the railway, I can absolutely understand how it would be a killing field. I mean, I guess over generations, animals and things can learn to go, hey, let's just not go there, but it will still catch some off guard, and that is unavoidable as long as they are there, and there's nothing you can really do about it because people need to be going in and out to enjoy it. But if only you could have the best of both worlds, really. Oh, and the other thing is, I mean, I hadn't thought about it the first time round, but seeing it a second time round just reminds me how many idiotic drivers there are on the road, and especially when people just aren't doing their daily commute, how unable they are to drive. And so if someone's just being a tourist in their own country or worldwide, they're definitely going to be more problems. So whether it's you're coming from a hot country and you don't know how to drive on snow, or you don't know how to drive on the other side of the road, or you're just bad in general, whatever it may be, that is exponentially going to increase the likelihood that someone will not be able to avoid something that they should probably be able to avoid generally. Like, really, people, oh man, it's just a very difficult situation. Like I said, you want people to experience it, but you don't want people to experience it by touch.
How will that additional growth further impact our parks and our wildlife? And how's it going to affect the 3 remaining members of the Banfftown Wolf Pack?
Only 3.
In recent months, Parks Canada announced some steps to address the expected influx of visitors this year, including a renewed focus on visitor education and a slight increase in funding for conservation staff. But what's really needed at this point is an action plan from the federal government to deal with these problems in Banff. Yeah. And the truth is, they already have one. In 1996, 20 years ago, the Bow Valley study came up with a clear list of recommendations for what should happen in Banff. Yet the various federal governments over the years have simply ignored most of those recommendations. The federal government needs to revisit that study and dramatically increase funding going back into conservation. Everyone should be able to visit our magnificent national parks and enjoy our wildlife like wolves. But for that to continue to happen, we need to ensure that our parks are protected now and for future generations. In early April, the Banfftown wolf family unfortunately suffered another tragedy. 2-year-old Anik, a black male wolf, dispersed out of the park and was shot and killed by a trophy hunter after leaving his father and sister. His sister's now wandering the Bow Valley on her own, but thankfully, it's not all bad news regarding this wolf family.
Okay.
Much to everyone's surprise, the alpha male, the father, Rusty, is believed to be denning with an unknown wolf or wolves just south of the town of Banff.
Okay.
What will these wolf pups face in Banff? Only time will tell.
I mean, it's a fade to black for a reason, isn't it? Because it is clearly an unfinished story. And this was, when was the video come out? It came out 5 years ago. And so yes, it did come out in 2017. And man, I wonder what actually has happened in those years. As from what people have told me, it has only been more and more commercialized. And I guess, to what end is the major question that has to be answered. What happened to that wolf pack to go from 8 to 3? Oh no, 8 to 2, because they lost this beautiful black guy right here. Oh man, look at him. Just this incredible animal filled and surrounded by more incredible nature. Like, it's just such a shame. But these are the kind of videos and conversations that need to be had in order to prevent this or slow this or whatever you want to be calling it from happening in the future. Like, things need to change clearly, because in recent years they're exponentially getting worse, going from 8 to 2 in a matter of years. It just seems ridiculous after however many generations. Like I said, I can't even fathom that. Like, I guess the entire thing very quickly breaks down, and we'll see, or they've seen, or we won't see, I guess, what happens in the future. But oh man, just to go from being a wolf pack to being a lone wolf. There are very particular reasons that we use those expressions, and man, they are rooted in nature. And so look, I would love to visit Banff and Jasper and all of these surrounding parks, or honestly any national park. I'm sure it's got something going for it, but man, it just feels like time's are ticking.